Joining me this week is an author, a journalist, and a commentator on the Rebel TV. Lauren Southern, welcome to the Rubin Report.
Thanks for having me.
We are way overdue for this.
Yeah, there's been a lot of comments on Twitter constantly, when are you going on Rubin? When are you going on Rubin? So people are probably going to be pretty ecstatic to see this.
They are already ecstatic. You have to do what Twitter demands of you.
Of course.
You find that all
what
your
do the
day-to-day...
Twitter gods say?
Yeah, you have to. Now, you are coming, we're here in LA, but you, yesterday, I guess, were in Mexico at an anarchist convention?
Yeah, it's called Anarchapulco, so a bunch of hippies, a bunch of anti-status. You had people like Adam Kokesh there and Jeff Berwick, all of these, Luke Rudowski. It was a lot of fun, of course. Every table I sat down at, they'd look at me, are you a statist, you know? But I think we agree on more than we disagree, so I had fun there.
Yeah, so we've only met once, and it almost seems like a lifetime ago. You joined Milo when he came on my show the first time, which I think it was either October or November of 2015, so it's not that long ago. But that seems like a lifetime ago, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was October, and we went to the Amber Rose Slut Walk then. Oh my gosh, it does feel like so long ago. Milo blew up since then, like insanely. I started working at Rebel full time. That was crazy. Just met you briefly there, but you're in a completely different studio.
Yeah, so I do want to talk about your rise, but let's talk about Milo for just a second.
Sure.
Because if you mention his name and then you don't say something, everyone's going to freak out. What are your general thoughts on what's happened over the last couple weeks?
You know, I actually made a video on it, and then I just decided not to publish it because I didn't think I could be objective on it. Because I know, like, I lived with Milo for like a week when I was in LA with him, and we went to your show and talked to him a bit. Obviously, he's been such a good person to me personally. He's even helped me through stuff, like in my personal life. Like, he's been just such a kind person. He is not a pedophile. He doesn't support pedophilia. I will never believe that. However, I understand how people looking in on the situation reacted that way. And I understand how I would have reacted if it were a Democrat that did this. Me knowing Milo personally changes my opinion on the issue, but I can't blame people for criticizing him. So I didn't publish the video because I didn't think I could be objective.
Yeah, isn't that one of the tough things of being sort of an online person, is that you feel like you have to comment on everything, and in this case you're actually friends with the person, and it's like no matter what you say, a certain amount of people are going to be angry at you for it.
Yeah, it was tough to watch. It was tough to watch because it was so, as much as it was true, these were quotes that were he had said, they came out of his very own mouth. It was obviously something that was coordinated to get him to not speak at CPAC. Obviously something coordinated from the right, which was even more crazy to me, to take him down. So I mean, it's hard to not take that into consideration when thinking about it as well. And that's what worried me too. I thought about, what if I get to the size that Milo is one day? What if I have 2 million Facebook followers one day and people go back and they just rummage through the stuff that I've done? What would they find? And you know, I thought about this one video I did in high school. It was for a grade 12 history project. And a girlfriend and I dressed up as Hitler and Mussolini, and we sang a duet about war crimes that we did, and like we got an A+ on it. But holy shit, if someone found that video and took it out of context, like the stuff that they can do to you if you have an arranged, coordinated attack against you, horrifying.
So was this just a very slick move by you, just mentioning this video right now? Because now, you know what I mean? You beat them to the punch.
That's what like 8 Mile, you know? You gotta self-dox. You gotta get there first.
So you said it's very obviously a coordinated something. Now, my feeling on conspiracy theories, I always say extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I assume you don't have any evidence that it was coordinated by someone on the right.
I gotta say, I've talked to people that, I can't say much without revealing much, but I've talked to people who like know some of the people that were like kind of involved and knew what was happening beforehand. So just, obviously I can't substantiate that, so I don't expect anyone to believe me. That's just personal. I guess there's tons of people watching too, but me to you.
This is gonna be on the internet, you know that, right? So without getting into the specifics of the evidence, why would somebody on the right, I mean, Milo was becoming the counterculture thing that was making conservatism cool again. Why would they want to take him out?
Well, Milo threatens the people, Milo Trump, the kind of anti-establishment type right that want to bring the right back to what conservatism actually is, and not neocons, not kind of the like establishment people. The people who want to bring it back to its origins are a big threat to the Evan McMuffins of the world.
The Evan McMuffins. Is he really someone that's in power though? Not really. Like he doesn't have any real influence. But you mean the ideas of those people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What do you make of Trump in that regard? Do you think he really is a conservative? I mean, that's why I think everything's so crazy right now. You got the left and right fighting, but Trump doesn't really exist in either of those spaces.
Well, I think our political spectrum of left and right is a little outdated. And it's really been, it's to simplify things for the wider populace who don't pay attention to politics that much, who aren't going to look at every policy. It's just easy categorization, left, right. Whereas, I mean, you have Trump coming out, and I don't agree with this, but he's going and putting out policies like supporting women in science and this kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, that's kind of a lefty thing to do, right? And like his views on healthcare and a lot of, there are people in this world that have pieces of the left and the right and mix them together in their politics. And I think Trump is far more one of those people than a lot of the other people.
Yeah. Isn't that pretty much how we all are? Except that everyone keeps yelling if anyone deviates in their thought. But we all are complex and have inconsistencies and have pieces that might feel a little more left or a little more right.
Absolutely. People need categorization in order to understand things. I always had a problem with using the word the left to describe people. I mean, I grew up listening to people like Ann Coulter and Dennis Prager, and they used the word the left a lot. But then I'd listen to people like Sargon of Akkad, and they're like, I'm a classical liberal, right? So I'm like, oh, do I want to use the word the left to describe everything? But when you do more and more videos online, you kind of realize it works. You get more views, more people pay attention because they understand that. That's already, I don't blame people for not being totally engaged in politics all the time. They have jobs, they have families to take care of, they have real lives.
Yeah, a good government would be one that we don't have to talk about all the time, right?
Exactly. So people need things to be a little like compartmentalized so that wider society can understand what's going on. So when you say the left, more people kind of understand what you're talking about now. Of course, if you say that in a political science classroom, the professor's going to be like, what are you talking about? Elaborate, right?
Right. So before we get too deep into all the political stuff, tell me a little bit about your history. Like, what even got you involved into politics? Were you always into politics?
Oh, well, yeah, I've been into politics since I was a kid. I think you recently had Dennis Prager on the show. My dad used to listen to Dennis Prager all the time when he would drive me to school. And this is when I was like 13. And he'd be driving us to school, and I'd love listening to Dennis Prager in the background. Super interesting. It was the opposite of what I was hearing in the classroom all the time. So it made me a very kind of anti-authority kid, because I'd always be like, but what about this? But what about that? And all my presentations would be anti what the teachers would say, because I just had so much fun with it.
How does that go for a kid in school in Canada?
Not so well. I mean, I had a lot of bad, get kicked out of classes kind of situation. I was definitely a or D student. Like, I'd do very good in the classes that I loved, but if I didn't get along with the teacher, like F, D student, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of that. I started downloading the Dennis Prager podcasts on my own and listening to them. But one thing I will say is I never had my views forced on me growing up. It was always my dad. I would come home from school and I would learn something at school or whatever, and I'd tell my dad about it, whether it be privilege theory or about kind of the history of Canada and how whites were oppressive to natives or something. And he would just ask me questions. He would never say, no, you should have this right-wing opinion. He would be like, okay, natives, for example, do you think that they had war and fights here before the settlers came to Canada? Do you think that happened, Lauren? Do you think it was a black and white situation? And I kind of sit there and think to myself, I don't know, and I'd look into it on my own, right? He'd just ask me questions, and whatever the better argument was that I'd find was what I would go with. And if that argument was debunked one day, that's what I would go with later, right? Yeah. So that was I had a very good childhood, very good parenting, I'd say, and that my dad's interest in politics and him always questioning me led me to take political sciences when I went to university.
Were you a political science major?
I was, but I dropped out. It's a waste of money.
Oh, you dropped out of school altogether?
I dropped out of university,
I dropped out of political science.
I went to go major in political science, did like 2 years, and then I was like, peace. I'm not going to pay anymore for this stuff. I can learn on my own.
I thought you were going to say that you had graduated as a poli-sci major, which would have made the two of us the only two people that ever used that degree to do something in politics.
Exactly. It's what is it, like poli-sci, philosophy, all of it. It's barista degrees.
Right. So do you consider yourself a conservative? Again, you know, this has been a through line through all my shows with the labels, and we've already addressed that they don't quite make sense. But you strike me a little more as a libertarian, and I guess, as you just said, the anarchists will consider you a statist.
Exactly.
But what do you really consider yourself?
Putting a label on it, it's so hard. National capitalist, libertarian nationalist, but that's the thing. To libertarians, I am a conservative. To conservatives, I'm more libertarian.
Yeah. What do we need to know about Canada? Just the politics of Canada? Because I feel like we know nothing about Canada. We see Trudeau and he's smiling, or he's on the mosque floor with the men, half mocking that the women are segregated and some other things. But what do we need to know about Canada that we don't know?
Well, Trudeau quite literally got elected because of his hair. And because it was nepotism because of his father and who his father was. And most people within the Canadian government that work for Trudeau, I mean, I'm not too much into the politicians are puppets conspiracy. Trudeau is literally a puppet. He's like, they just made him the leader because they knew he would win because of his pretty face and because of his father, and then they all think he's a joke. So that's Canada right now. We are being led by a literal joke that is a joke to his own party. What I'd say to everyone who likes liberty is look into Maxime Bernier. He is a French-Canadian candidate that is literally a libertarian running for the Conservative Party right now, and I think he has a real shot at winning. He has the most campaign donations of any of the candidates running right now, and he's like a literal Rand Paul. Imagine if Rand Paul had the highest campaign donations in the American election. That would be crazy. So he's been fun to watch. We've got a few okay candidates. No Trumps. Kevin O'Leary is not Trump.
Is he not? That's where I was going next.
He's not Trump. No. He's he makes lots of comments about anti-gun comments, pro-refugee comments, very very globalist policy. You'll have to. I don't have it all on me right now. My coworker Faith Goldie, she's done a really good video talking about this and why she doesn't think Kevin O'Leary is Trump. But
yeah. So in a way, he'd be too centrist to sort of capture the imagination the way Trump did down here.
Yeah, and I mean, we've got a lot of politicians in Canada trying to be Trump right now. We have this one lady, Kelly Leach, and she is the one who's been in the news lately because she came out with a immigration test where she wants to test for Canadian values, and everyone was like, wow, is this our Trump? She has a real stance on immigration and making sure people assimilate. But then she does this ridiculous stuff. She sent out an email, and in the bottom of it, it's like, we need to drain the canal. And it's just trying so hard.
Right.
And she's not Trump.
We have to put poutine on the something or other of the country.
They're trying very, very hard to emulate what happened in America. And then you've got another half of them that are trying very, very hard to not and condemn it and call it white supremacy. There's this guy named Michael Chong who is quite literally, he's just a liberal that's running for the Conservatives. And what did we called him our John Kasich. And he's just calling everything white supremacy, supporting all of the big liberal policies and all of the politicians that are like Trump he's calling out. So the whole Canadian election is kind of being based around the American election right now, and people either not wanting to be like that or wanting to be like that.
Well, good luck with all of that.
Yeah, thank you. We need it.
What do you make of the whole white supremacy thing? The idea that we even have to talk about this seems sort of ridiculous. I just don't think, yes, I think there are some white supremacists, as there always have been. I don't think that there are Nazis running around. Nazis were a political party in Germany in the 1930s. They're not really running around now. But this idea that somehow white supremacism has come back and it's conflated with Pepe memes and all this stuff. What portion of this do you actually think is real and has traction? Well,
the fact of the matter is that people literally have to create white supremacy. They are so desperate to find it that they are making fake swastikas. They are pointing out if someone's just wearing a white hat, that's a Klan hood, right? In fact, the Canadian Nazi Party in Canada, my boss Ezra did a good video on it. There was actually a Jewish organization that backed up and egged on people to start the Canadian Nazi Party because they wanted more kind of hate crimes to point out, right?
Right.
And it's
so it's sort of like the cops need a certain amount of crime, a certain political view. You need these hate groups. Otherwise, you don't have any cachet.
Yeah, and like half the people on sites like Stormfront are feds. Like it's a big joke online. If you go, I spend a lot of time like in tons of different political communities on Facebook, just like reading it. And if you go into any alt-right Facebook groups, the joke is always if you post anything super Nazi or anything, they're like, "Oh, Fed, are you a Fed?" Right?
Right.
Like, they're like, no one does that in real life. No one runs around with Nazi tattoos in real life. You don't see it.
So if it doesn't exist, then what? Well, you would agree that some of it exists, right? Like there's something there somewhere that's true.
Yeah, even the Richard Spencers of the world, like they're kind of misrepresented as well. Like Richard Spencer is not a white supremacist. He is a white nationalist. He believes in a white ethno-state. He doesn't believe in whites being superior. So the problem that's happened is so many people they've never read fascist literature. They've never studied any of the far-right ideologies. They've just been told bigotry, 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 repeat bigotry. So they have no idea what they're talking about. So either now they've gone in, they called everything Nazism, everything white supremacy. The word means nothing anymore. And then when you have Richard Spencer's come out of the woodwork that supports a white ethno-state kind of thing, they don't even know how to argue against him because they've never even heard the arguments in their life before. The only argument they have is bigot. So if there is a white nationalist, white supremacist uprising in America, it's simply going to be because the arguments against white nationalists don't exist other than bigot.
Other when people than hear you can that, punch Nazis
exactly,
in the face.
And that's not a good argument. And it's literally bringing sympathy to the very, very few people that exist.